The allegations in the Globe story this morning are false.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but you can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail.
Well, things aren't looking too good for Mark Carney, as in the past 24 hours, we've had a few new developments on some different stories. Now, the main one is about the whole China connection and the interaction that happened yesterday with the Globe and Mail reporter. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, he was posed a question about his replacement for his Markham Unionville member, Paul Chiang, since this new candidate has quite a bit of ties to the CCP and there's been a history on his alliance to China, but also a group that Mark Carney apparently interacted with, the JCCC. And Mark Carney did not like this question, but this was the whole interaction that was aired yesterday.
Hi, Najida Malise, Globe and Mail. My colleagues have a story today about a Liberal candidate's relations with China-friendly groups and a meeting that you also held with a pro-Beijing group. So my question is, why did you meet with this pro-Beijing group, Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada? And is the party okay with the fact that Liberal candidate Peter Yuen has been so close with the Chinese consulate and China-friendly groups, given the public inquiry into foreign interference, says that this is a tactic China uses to exert influence?
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but you can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail. So in your question, and I guess in the article in question, you said I had a meeting with whatever your term was, Beijing group. I've never heard of this group, okay? Never heard of this group. Certainly didn't have a set-up meeting with this group. Full stop. So check your sources before you write things like that, okay? Or your colleagues do.
Now, you can tell he's visibly annoyed with the China thing being brought up again, but I don't think you should be suggesting to people to check their sources, because there's definitely folks that are going to dig into this. And that's what happened yesterday. This is what they found. Now, this is a thumbnail of the webpage at hand, because now it is no longer there, and we'll get to that in a second. But this goes on to say, financial giant takes charge of the Maple Leaf country. The China-Canada strategic breakthrough ushers in hope. Recently, I'm not even going to attempt to try to pronounce this, president of the JCCC and Jing Ru, honorary president, and other Chamber of Commerce representatives had an in-depth meeting with the soon-to-be appointed prime minister. Now, not only do we have this little clip, we also have some photos of Mark Carney standing with these individuals in question, not to mention some solo photos with the president and the honorary president themselves. Now, as I mentioned, this story has now been changed because, as we see here on the CBC, they posted out a statement saying, the statement from the Liberal Party spokesman, the web post referenced in the Globe and Mail article is inaccurate, as is the suggestion that Mark Carney had any such in-depth discussion. We have reached out to the organization correcting the record and asked that they remove such claims immediately. Now, the JCC didn't just correct the statement to say that Mark Carney didn't actually meet them. They completely wiped it out for him. As you can see, if you go back to the original link, it brings you to a 404 page. However, the internet is forever, and Mark Carney and the Liberals need to learn that, because if you go back to the Wayback Machine, you can find the whole article in question. So again, this kind of talks about him and his, his history and stuff. You see the photos with him shaking the hands of these members. Again, the group photo, and then at the bottom here it says, at the moment of the deep adjustment of the global pattern, Carney's new performance is regarded as an important turning point in the upgrading of the China-Canada relations. Now, I did try to look for the Globe and Mail article, and I'm not sure if this is the one. However, this was updated 2 hours ago, and it says, Carney says he had never heard of the pro-Beijing group despite photos with its leaders, and I already showed you those photos. But on the CBC last night with David Cochrane, Robert Fife, who's one of the head editors at Globe and Mail, was on, and he had quite a lot to say. Take a listen.
So, Bob, you're here, you're at the center of this. What's your reaction to what Carney said today in the statement from the party?
Well, first of all, we never said that there was a meeting. We said that this organization met him, and according to their website, they had an in-depth discussion. Mm-hmm. That's the story, and which, by the way, that wasn't the focus of the story. The focus of the story is on the Liberal candidate in the riding that was replaced by another Liberal
Etobicoke
MP.
North, I think,
Etobicoke,
yeah.
no, I know it's
Union Market.
Markham
Union.
Yeah, sorry. My apologies.
And this man named Peter Yuen is a former deputy police chief. We checked him out, and he is being connected to Beijing-friendly organizations, including this organization who met with Mr. Carney. They echo and repeat the lines of the Chinese Communist Party. The other groups that Mr. Yuen met with were the Chinese Freemasons, which talks about annexation of Taiwan. He's been celebrated and had many meetings with the Chinese consulate, which we now know from the public inquiry into foreign interference that the Chinese consulate is the key organizing body for all of these proxy groups that try to influence politicians. So that was the point of our story. But here's the thing I want to talk, and I'm glad Mr. Carney raised this, because here's the reason why. This same group, if you go to the website, after they met him, they wrote a laudatory thing about how great Mark Carney is, how great he is and going to improve Chinese-Canadian relations. So what did we find out on Monday? The site committee, which looks into federal election interference, said that WeChat and China has been trying to mold public opinion involving Mr. Carney. What are they molding? Nice things about him, what a tough guy he is, how he can take on the Americans. So I guess the point here is, has anybody learned anything from the foreign interference inquiry or not? This is the strategy of China to try to influence no matter which political party you are. And rather than trying to attack the media, why doesn't he just say, look, we have to do a better job of dealing with these kind of organizations that are trying to influence politicians?
And Robert's making some very valid points. Have you not learned anything from China, their tactics, from the foreign interference that has already occurred in Canada? And to the CBC watchers out there, the people who are, never vote conservative, anything like that, who do you think is a bigger threat to us at this point? Do you think it's Donald Trump still? Or do you think China, if their reach is able to penetrate Canada, do you think they would be a bigger threat? I myself am more concerned with China and their reach, their dictatorship, their rules, their laws, all that kind of stuff. And the guy that we have currently at the helm of our country has very deep ties to China. This guy is so pro-China. Just like Robert Fife said, on Monday they were giving us information how in the WeChat they were promoting Mark Carney. So if you think that China is a bigger threat to us than Donald Trump, this is not the guy that you should be voting for.
And China has shown incredible leadership, with President Xi's historic commitments to peak emissions by 2030 and to decarbonizing the Chinese economy by 2060 at the latest.
Now, another point that Robert Fife was trying to make was that the question in hand wasn't so much about the meeting that Mark Carney had or that he met these individuals, but it was more so about the replacement of Paul Chiang with Peter Yuen. Because in this article that they wrote about him, he's got very much CCP views and all that stuff. He believes on the annexation of Taiwan. It says Mr. Yuen has also spoken and attended events at the Toronto branch of the Chinese Freemasons, which has advocated for what it calls the peaceful reunification of China and Taiwan. And so this is what they were trying to get at. Mark Carney did mention or did answer a little bit of the question in regards to the candidate, saying that he believes in him. He's been a police officer for so many years. Kind of the same thing that he said with Paul Chiang before Paul Chiang decided to step down.
I'm a politician. I go to events where there are hundreds and thousands over the course of a day of different people there. That is not a meeting. If somebody happens to be in the room, takes a picture with me, that's not a meeting, okay? First point. Secondly, with respect to Mr. Yuen, this is a person who has served his community for decades. This is a person who's deputy commissioner of the police, okay? A person in discharge of those responsibilities meets with a variety of community groups in the community because that's his job. That's his responsibility. We're proud to have him as a candidate, and I honor his service, including on today. Thank you.
But it it didn't stop there for Carney, because yesterday Pierre Poilievre also put out this, which was an article from the CBC as well, saying, while Carney's liberals hiked taxes on you, he dodged his taxes by stashing his billions in not one, but two tax havens. The latest we know being the Cayman Islands. And this is based off this article by Daniel LeBlanc here from the CBC saying, Brookfield used Cayman Islands to register the third fund managed by Carney. But what I want you to take a look at is when we go to the actual article here, right underneath, they try to negate it by saying the use of tax havens is legal, widespread among investment firms, but opens the liberal leader to political attacks. So they're reporting on this, telling us that this is what's happening with Brookfield and Mark Carney and the company that he once chaired, but just letting you know, this is legal. A lot of firms use it. So what? We shouldn't hold him accountable for this? We still don't know what this guy's funds are, where his assets lay, because he won't disclose them. He just said, they're in a blind trust. They're kind of out of my hands. Now, in the beginning of the article, it does state a $5 billion investment fund created under Mark Carney's leadership at Brookfield Asset Management was registered in the Cayman Islands tax haven, according to records obtained by Radio-Canada. That's in addition to two other funds totaling $25 billion that were registered in Bermuda, another offshore tax haven, when the liberal leader was on the firm's board of directors from 2020 to 2025. Brookfield declined to comment on its use of tax haven as part of the structuring of its funds. In past public statements, the firm has insisted it does not engage in tax avoidance and that all its entities pay all required taxes in the jurisdictions in which they operate. Now, I find this to all be a bunch of baloney. For sure, they're not paying what's required, seeing as they are labeled the biggest tax dodgers in Canada. But this reporting and defending type of situation we constantly see with the CBC. I mean, David here, he points out, this is how the CBC covers a conservative crime announcement versus how they cover a liberal crime announcement. And he has screenshots of two different articles. This one says, Poilievre tries to draw voter attention to violent crimes as the Trump concerns dominate. And this is the narrative that keeps being pushed on Pierre and the conservatives, saying that they're not pivoting, they're not targeting the ballot question, which again, I don't know who decided that Trump is the ballot question, but they're making it seem like, oh, he's here talking about crime, but Trump is really the big issue. However, then they report on this one the next day saying, Carney announces sweeping plan to crack down on crime, strengthen the border. Liberal leader says that the weak U.S. border measures allow guns, drugs, and drugs to flow into Canada. Now, I don't disagree with that. I do think that the weak border there does allow that. But why is it here, this is positive, saying that he's trying to crack down, but over here they're saying, well, he's trying to draw attention to it when Trump is the main concern. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is how you know that all of this is biased, and the people are starting to wake up. I mean, even the CEO of Shopify says here, CBC are the employees of the voters, and they are totally failing them. 100%. There's no way that you can look at this and say that this is fair journalism. And at this point, it's not just the CBC, it's also the CTV. We could see this here with reporter Rachel Aiello. She was at Pierre's rally last night, and she writes, inside Pierre Poilievre's rally, and a C.W. McCall song Convoy plays ahead of the conservative leader taking to the stage. What does that insinuate? Haven't spotted any more do you believe the polls signage? And again, this is something to do with Trump and America because, well, as we saw, all the polls kept saying that Kamala Harris was going to win. 2016, they had the whole, the election was stolen from us. And she is trying to insinuate that with this kind of a comment. She got a lot of backlash in her comment section, but she even took the time to ask him this at his press conference on the same day. And he just said, yes. That's all he even bothered to give her was just a simple yes.
Good morning, Rachel Aiello, CTV News. We've met people at your rallies who don't believe the polls. Do you believe the polls, and can you commit today that you will respect the results of the election no matter the outcome?
Yes.
Now, to be fair, they did ask Mark Carney this same question, but I think that was only for optics, because if you see them only ask Pierre this question and not Carney, then it kind of shows their cards. But at this point, Mark Carney is not going to have to answer for a lot of these questions for a while because he's going into hiding now. He's put a pause on his campaign. He's putting on his prime minister hat to call Trump, to deal with tariffs, to do whatever he pretends to do because he's still in caretaker mode. He's not actually elected or anything like that. So there's not much this guy can do, but he's not really going to be, I think, in front of cameras too much for a while. Maybe a lot of these things will calm down, and maybe we'll see some change in the polls that they keep talking about. I guess we'll see. But as always, love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about all this. Hope you have a great weekend. I get to celebrate my son's second birthday, so that'll be a fun time. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.